he drives faster than I do. Very often I'll go, can you slow down? Can you slow down? And he's like, I'm not going fast at all.
Early days when you were cutting some onions.
No, it was you cutting peppers.
No, it was you. No.
I'm very precise in terms of time. I really want to be there not only at the time, but before the time.
As far as my own family, it was not that big a thing. And if you were late, you're late.
Timekeeping. With me wanting to be everywhere ahead of time and Michael always running late.
My mom, bless her, she was like taking care of all the things that needs to be done, so I wouldn't care about anything. But when we got married, I found the different lives. I need to wash dishes, I need to put my...
Hang your clothes.
Yeah, or all those simple things.
No, it was you. You were cutting it the wrong way, but you were doing peppers and you cut them short ways rather than long ways. Do you know what? I couldn't be in the kitchen after that with him.
When we first got married, we went to the grocery store. I start grocery shopping in the exact same way I've always grocery shopped. I'm picking out all the regular food. He'd put back the one I got and take the cheaper one. And I'm like, what are you doing? I like that sauce. He's like, yeah, but this one's on sale.
No, but I always cut the long ways.
Conflict's still there.
Some level of disagreement in marriage is inevitable. It's normal. Every couple will face conflict. And that's because we come into marriage with different backgrounds, different desires, different priorities, different personalities.
And conflict is also inevitable because we're all selfish to a greater or lesser degree. Most of us would admit we find it easier to focus on our own desires, our own needs, our own opinions, than on those of our husband or wife.
And some couples think that when they hit conflict, it's all over, that they've made the wrong choice of partner. That's partially because the media and popular culture tend to perpetuate the message that if the relationship isn't perfect, if you have disagreements and conflicts, it's the wrong relationship.
But that's not true. As couples, we will all disagree. In fact, it's healthy to discuss our differences. It's much better than burying disagreements, suppressing our opinions and views, or denying we have any differences of opinion between us. Conflict doesn't mean we've married the wrong person or that the relationship is doomed to failure. In fact, rather, with the right tools, addressing the conflict can strengthen the relationship. Rather than seeing ourselves as being on opposite sides, actually, in our marriage, we're on the same side, the same team.
I don't know if you've ever tried to row a boat with your partner. It was one of the first things Scylla and I did when we met as teenagers on holiday, and we weren't very good at it. The main problem was we were trying to prove to each other who was the better rower. Both of us were pulling our hardest on the oars, but our strokes were different lengths, so we were lurching from side to side. And in addition, we weren't rowing in time, and the oars kept clashing. It was hard work, and the boat didn't make much progress through the water. It was only when we stopped being so competitive and we started matching our strokes and pulling in time with each other that suddenly we had that amazing feeling of getting into a rhythm, and the boat started to glide through the water.
In marriage, we have to work through problems together, with both of us asking ourselves, are there ways that I need to change for the sake of our partnership? And with that mindset, we can make a good team and move forwards in harmony.
Money causes the most arguments in marriages.
Money. No, annoying habits.
Probably who's right.
The need to be right. The more expectations you have, the more difficult it is.
Not filling the dishwasher properly.
I think when there's outside influence, for example, in-laws.
I'd say secrets.
Best way to resolve conflict in marriage.
Sit down and talk about it.
Is really honesty and just that you guys are for each other.
Not to compete, but to solve the problem.
Listening with 2 ears, 1 mouth.
2 ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah.
We discuss like who's gone wrong where, and then we just hug it out at the end.
Yeah.
What's the word? When you kind of like compromise.
We meet up and we fight about it. Then we go on a date.
He'll never be able to find a matching pair of socks. That can really escalate into a mind-blowing fight. How did we resolve it, Thomas?
All my socks are one color only.
We're going to look at 4 principles for working together to resolve conflict effectively. The first principle is remember your partner's positive qualities.
Continuing to show our appreciation for what we love and admire about our partner, even while we may disagree passionately about various issues, protects our relationship from descending into nagging and complaining. No marriage can survive a lack of respect, a lack of positive, encouraging words being spoken to each other.
So my name is Tolu Dugbemi. I worked in the oil industry in Nigeria, and her cousin's husband was one of my workmates, and we got on really well. He says to me, his wife's cousin, he thinks would be brilliant for me, and I gave in to him and said, all right, fine, I will take her number, give me her number, I will call. And what I thought would be a 2-3 minute conversation turned into a 2-hour conversation. And a month later, I asked her to marry me.
Over Skype.
Yeah.
We had not
met.
Was... And I said, certainly. Recently, you let me know that you really felt like I wasn't appreciating the things that you did around the house. I think that was hard to hear, because when someone does stuff and you said to them 1,000 times, or not 1,000 times, but quite a few times, oh, I really appreciate what you've done. You don't click that you stopped doing it. I felt so bad. And then just that reminder every time, thank you for doing this, and thank you for putting the kids to bed, or thank you for taking the little one to do a wee in the middle of the night, or just those things that seem really mundane, because it really matters.
We can all make our husband or wife feel like the most important person in the world for us, simply through expressing our appreciation for them.
And that's the way we build up their confidence and their sense of value. Just like the author Mark Twain once said, I can live for 2 months on a sincere compliment.
While most couples, when they're dating, tend to say a lot of positive things to each other, once we've been married for a bit, it is all too easy to focus on those things that irritate us about our partner.
And every couple will be able to think of certain things. Let me give you an example of something that irritates me. After a meal, we always wash the pots and pans in a bowl of hot water in the sink. And if Scylla has washed up last thing at night, she has this annoying habit of leaving the dirty water in the bowl. Now, I'm always the first to come downstairs in the morning to make Scylla a cup of tea. And I'm faced with this bowl of cold water with the grease now congealed around the edges. And what's worse, she leaves the brush in the water, so I have to put my hands in to retrieve it before trying to get rid of the grease. Now, I have mentioned this a few times over the last 40 years, and it is true, Scylla does it less frequently now.
Okay, while we're on the subject of what irritates us, one of the things I find really annoying about Nicky is that he puts his clothes in this sort of toppling pile on the chair in our bedroom, rather than hanging them up in the cupboard or putting them away in the drawers. So, for me, remembering that I like being married to someone who has a very laid-back attitude to life really helps me. In fact, it was one of the things I loved most about Nicky when I first met him.
The amazing thing is, the more we concentrate on the things we appreciate about each other, the more appreciative we become of each other.
Telling our partner what we like and admire about them needs to be something that we practice on a daily basis. We need to make it a habit. There's a psychologist in the US called Professor John Gottman, who's been analysing the habits of married couples for over 40 years. And he believes he's able to tell within the first 5 minutes of listening to and watching a couple whether or not their relationship is in trouble. He says that a key indicator is, are they showing each other appreciation? And his advice to couples is this: by simply reminding yourself of your partner's positive qualities, even as you grapple with each other's flaws, you can prevent a happy marriage from declining.
You'll see in your journal the first conversation, entitled Showing Appreciation. The idea is to write down 6 things that you appreciate about your partner. It may be thanking them for what they do, or it may be telling them what you admire about their character, and try to make it a mixture. Then, when you've both finished writing, read out to each other what you've written, and try to come up with 6 if you possibly can.
How are you feeling?
That's one of the best conversations to look back at once in a while when you finish the course. read again what you wrote down about each other. When we keep showing our appreciation for each other's positive qualities, we're much more likely to work together as a team.
The second principle for resolving conflict effectively is to recognize that differences between us are good. Trying to make our husband or wife think and behave like us never works. We can be very different in all sorts of ways, for example, in how we make decisions. One of us might make decisions quickly and easily and doesn't worry about making mistakes, while our partner may be more cautious and careful, taking a long time over every decision.
That's me. We bought a second-hand car recently, and we had a choice between two almost identical ones. And Scilla was very excited that we'd made the decision so quickly, while I lay awake most of the following night, worrying we'd bought the wrong one.
I see. And this is Phil, and we met in a pub.
I was too nervous to sit next to you, but there was only one space left in the circle of friends, and it was next to you, so it was...
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
We are chalk and cheese, really, in a lot of ways, a lot of differences.
Yeah.
You like staying in, I like going out. You liked R&B. I liked anything but R&B.
He's need to tell a story for about 10 hours before he gets to the punchline. And I just want the ending.
You like Netflix and I like BBC4 documentaries.
If you put me in a room with strangers, I will make my way around.
I'll hide in the corner. You're spend first, save later. I'm save first, spend later.
Yeah.
Spicy food. Non-spicy food. You're black, I'm white.
Yeah.
I can dance, you can't. No joking. Sorry, other way around, I got that wrong.
Phil does the two-step.
Don't do anything.
No.
A major difference between many couples is how they restore their energy. And that'll depend on whether they're more extroverted or introverted. Extroverts need a certain amount of time with others. Introverts, on the other hand, need more time on their own. Another difference between an extrovert and an introvert is that extroverts tend to think out loud. That's external processing. While introverts, on the whole, like to sort out their thoughts first and then speak. That's internal processing.
I'm married to an extreme extrovert, and because Scilla is often thinking out loud, I've had to learn not to react too quickly when she says something to me with great passion and conviction, as she's quite likely to change her mind and say the opposite 5 minutes later with equal passion and conviction. As an introvert, I like to work out what I think before speaking. So if we have a difficult decision, I'll typically go away by myself to think it through, and then I'll tell Scilla what I think.
At which point, I tell Nikki, that is not a discussion. That is just your conclusion. But in marriage, we have to learn to accept our varying approaches. One attitude isn't better or worse than another, it's just different. And a strong marriage is where we see ourselves as a partnership, combining our strengths and helping each other in our weaknesses.
As a couple, we won't just be different in terms of our personalities. We all come into marriage from different backgrounds and with different values. One example of this for us came out in our different approaches to money, as is the case with many couples. By and large, there are three choices we can make with our money. We can save it, we can spend it, or we can give it away. Now, Scilla and I have never had a problem agreeing on how much and to whom we should give money away. But with the other two options, we are poles apart. I suppose I describe myself as a natural saver.
Whereas I am much more of a natural spender. Now, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. That doesn't mean I'm a compulsive shopper. Actually, I don't enjoy shopping any more than Nikki does. It's just that I find it easier to spend money than Nikki does.
In fact, much easier. And that led to a lot of conflict in the early years of our marriage, with me feeling quite resentful and Scilla feeling rather guilty. And we both thought that I was better with money than Scilla. And then one day we had a really big argument, and I suddenly realized I'm not better with money than Scilla. Rather, we're better at different things with money.
Nikki is much better at managing money than me.
And Scilla is much better at using it. And many years on, I think we've learned how we complement each other. Scilla certainly helped me not to be overcautious and to use money a lot more freely. To give you an example, For their weekly pocket money, our children used to have 1 penny for each year of their age. 6pence, that's about 6 cents when they were 6, 8pence when they were 8, and so on. Then, one year when we were in the car returning from our summer holiday, our daughter Kirsty, who was aged 12 at the time, said to me, "Daddy, all my friends get more pocket money than I do." Well, I was about to explain to her that with pocket money, it's not the amount that matters. Rather, it's to give her an opportunity to practice handling money. But while I was still thinking out my response, Scylla joined in the conversation, not on what I thought was our side, but on our daughter's, saying she thought it was absolutely ridiculous how little they got. And by the time we got home, our children's pocket money had increased by 1,000%. Well, with the benefit of hindsight, 12 pence was never going to teach our daughter a whole lot about handling money sensibly. So, yes, Scylla helps me to be a lot freer with money.
And Nikki has definitely taught me how to keep account and not to overspend. In fact, he taught me how to budget. I grew up in a family where I didn't learn anything about budgeting. So if I was running short of money, I just used to bury my head in the sand. I didn't want to think about it. And I'd often go into overdraft. The difference now is that we talk about it. And I've got much better at planning ahead and keeping account.
Understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses around money helps us work much better as a team. And if you've never done a budget, you'll find some notes on how to go about it in your journal. And that will help you, as it did us massively, to make a plan and work together.
We're all different. We're all a sum total of our upbringing, of our experience, of our life. And when you come together, it's very, very possible that you could have completely diametric differences about how you deal and think about money. And the truth is, that's really okay. The thing is to understand that somehow you have to learn to live with some of the differences, but also have a togetherness around where it affects each of you. So you need to have an overall budget as a couple. You need to decide, what is your spending going to be? What are your priorities with your money? What do you have to spend and what do you want to spend? What would you like to have and what do you have to have? From that building block of a budget spins a wonderful, confident, together decision process upon which you are in control of your money. So what should you do if you really are under significant financial pressure? I think the first thing for me to say to you is, you're not alone. This happens to millions of people around the world. The most important thing is to realize, is it for a season? Or is it a long-term, significant, lifelong problem? If it's a season, is there something you can do significantly to get yourself out of the financial difficulties? Or can you weather the storm? Do you have family or friends who can help you weather the storm if it is a seasonal thing? If it's not a seasonal thing, do you need to make some radical, significant decisions about your finances, about what you need to do? And I would always suggest, if you find yourself in these situations, whilst it's important that you as a couple work through it, you must not do it alone. Find someone who specialises in financial difficulties. Go and speak to someone who you trust, who can give you the proper advice. Don't just make a decision based on your own thinking. And one of the most beautiful things about being able to manage money well as a couple is that the things that you will learn about each other, those skills and the communication that you will have to develop as you talk about money, will spin out into many other areas of your life, as I can testify.
The next conversation is called Recognizing Your Differences. So first of all, against the list of issues, each of you put your own and your partner's initials where you think you each come on the line between the two extremes. And you'll see the examples for Nikki and myself. Regarding money, I'm more towards the spending end of the spectrum, while Nikki is much closer to the saving end.
And on punctuality, Scylla likes to leave lots of time to catch a train or a plane, whereas I prefer to cut it fine, as I think getting there any earlier than we strictly need to feels like a complete waste of time to me. As you're filling in your own responses, don't look at what your husband or wife has put until you've both finished. Then discuss how in at least one area you complement each other and how you can operate effectively in that area as a team. As we've said, Scylla and I have lots of differences, and we often find ourselves laughing at them. Take the way we speak. While I try to use a minimum of words to get my point across, Scylla will use as many words as possible and often exaggerates wildly. And I tease her a lot about that, such as when she tells me she's bought 1 million tons of groceries. Humour is such an important part of a healthy marriage. It functions rather like the oil in a car. Without it, the engine will seize up.
The third principle for handling conflict effectively is look for an us solution. People approach conflict differently. Some try to force their partner to do things their way. They go on the attack. Other people surrender. They may be frightened of disagreements. They want to hide, run away, or do anything to avoid confrontation. Still, other people bargain. They say, I'll do this if you do that. But that all too easily becomes, I won't do my bit because you haven't done your bit.
And none of these approaches builds closeness or is effective in resolving conflict. However, there's a way that is effective, and that's through seeking a solution together. It means seeing that really we're on the same side and working together on the issue causing the conflict as a team.
And sometimes that means delaying the discussion on a particular issue. I think we'd all recognise that there are bad times to try and resolve arguments. And at those times, we have to press an imaginary pause button and wait for a better moment.
When conflict arises, I'm a fixer and I want to fix it straight away. I can't go to bed with it unresolved. Or I had to learn that you were someone that had to collect your thoughts.
Process it.
I had to learn that people deal with disagreement in different ways.
I wouldn't always pick my timing well. I think we had to learn to actually, we need to sit down and talk about some of these things. And also to know to put a pause on some things. Let's talk about this when we actually have the time and the space and we're not around other people.
Great time to bring it up whilst other people are around.
No, like...
Because she just can't have a go at you.
Definitely not good if it's late at night and we're hungry.
Oh, dude. I mean, that's usually what starts conflict. Both of us will be like, are you hungry?
He knows that he's gonna bring it to me right before going to bed or 11 p.m. He will fall asleep in 3 seconds, whereas for me it's like 3 hours later and bad sleeping and then waking up or like grumpy.
To me, the night is just getting started at 9 p.m. Like that's where you enter into your most serious conversations.
It would be 2 in the morning and we're arguing, probably because I was so tired. His whole family functions that way.
He doesn't function very well at night. He'd be sitting in front of the TV watching football. Yes. We've got to talk about it now, and he refuses, and so I stomp off to bed feeling even angrier.
It's getting heated. It's about 10 o'clock and we're often, I think, have said we can't talk about this now.
And then we book in a time to talk about it, and it's really freeing to go, I love you, but let's deal with this later.
There are a number of bad times to argue, such as arguing in front of other people, as in the saying, don't air your dirty laundry in public, or just before a special occasion when emotions are heightened, or when we're in a rush, or when we've just walked in through the door at the end of a busy day.
But the number one worst time to argue, for most couples, is late at night. And that's because when we're tired, we can so easily get things out of perspective. In the early months of our marriage, our most futile arguments were always last thing at night. And then very helpfully, some friends who'd got married 2 weeks before us told us about what they called the 10 o'clock rule. They explained that if they were having an argument late in the evening, either one of them could call the 10 o'clock rule into play. And that meant the argument had to be paused and postponed until a better time, perhaps earlier the next evening or over a cup of coffee at the weekend.
And that was such a help for us, and we've often used the 10 o'clock rule over the years. Now, of course, waiting for a better time takes self-discipline. But learning self-discipline plays an important part in resolving conflict more effectively, and it has certainly been a big part for me. I am naturally more volatile than Nikki. I like to get things out into the open as soon as possible, and I find waiting for a better time really difficult. But I've come to realise that the disagreement doesn't always have to be resolved there and then, and I've learned that sometimes it isn't helpful to tell Nikki everything I feel straight away, and especially not late at night.
Using the 10 o'clock rule doesn't mean going to bed still angry with each other. The issue may not be resolved, but if either or both of us are aware we've said some unkind things, we need to apologise and forgive each other. That reassures our partner that our relationship is still okay, even though we haven't yet reached agreement about the issue. Delaying a disagreement may well involve some of us having to learn to control our temper, because if our anger is out of control, it can cause us to hurl accusations at each other in the heat of an argument, which will be highly damaging to our relationship.
If you're married to someone who's rageful, it's quite terrifying. Sometimes people who have issues with rage, most of the time they're not rageful, they just have these moments where suddenly everything goes crazy. Ideally, they're not physically abusive, but they may be verbally abusive, or they might damage property around the house if they're really mad at times. And even though they may not be rageful like that all the time, what happens is the person who's married to them lives in fear of that rage, so they learn to sort of tread on eggshells around the other person. I'd say to people who are feeling that that's them, you know, that's what they do, they are that rageful person, I would say firstly, notice that that's what you're doing, but also if you're really honest with yourself, be clear that actually you gain some benefit from behaving like that. Because if your wife or husband are scared of your rage, you kind of get to control them, you get to be in charge. And so kind of dealing with rage, beginning to manage that kind of anger requires us not only to notice how damaging it is, but also begin to come to terms with the fact that we're gaining some rewards from behaving in that way. So if you know that you have an anger problem, you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my goodness, that's me, that's what I do, then I think firstly, don't be ashamed to seek help. And when we seek help for anger, what we're really saying is, we're not saying I want my anger to go away. What we're saying is, I want to express my dissatisfaction in a way that's good for me, good for the person I'm married to, and good for both of us in our marriage. So ideally it becomes something that's productive, and it's good, and it moves us forward. And therefore I would say, if you feel you need help, go and look for that, and don't be ashamed of the fact that's what you're after.
We're going to look now at 5 very practical steps that will help us to reach agreement and find an us solution. The first step is focus on the issue that's causing the conflict. Arguments so easily get widened and all sorts of other things get drawn in, so that sometimes we can't even remember what it was we were arguing about in the first place.
Identifying and focusing on the main issue prevents disagreements escalating. Imagine a 3-seater sofa, wife at one end and husband at the other. And this contentious issue is right between us, keeping us apart and stopping us hearing each other properly or seeing each other's perspective. Focusing on the issue means taking it from between us and putting it out in front of us. Then, as husband and wife, we can move together on the sofa with nothing between us and focus on the issue that's out in front of us rather than attack each other. When we do this, we find the issue itself becomes more manageable.
Take one. My name's Jorge, and this is my wife Alexandra. We're both from Puerto Rico. We met in college.
One of the things that we have found that helps our conflict resolution is visualizing that the conflict or the issue that is happening is not in between us, but in front of us. It's us as a team together trying to face that thing, that conflict or that's happening.
Having a specific time when it's not urgent, it's certainly very helpful, because it lets you come with clearer ideas or a clearer understanding, and you mentally prepare that this is when we're dealing with this specific thing.
It's not that I'm against him or him against me. It is us trying to solve it, and I didn't feel as burdened as. You know, I felt like, oh, I have somebody with me thinking about how to get better. And that really took away a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety every time that we have a conflict.
The second step to reach agreement and find us solutions is use I statements. In the heat of an argument, it is so easy to say you always or you never. But when we use either of these phrases, we're labeling each other's character. A much better way of putting it is to use I statements, describing our own feelings. So rather than you never do anything to help, it's much better to say, I was really upset you didn't help me with the clearing up after dinner last night. And instead of, You always make us late. It's better to say, I don't like leaving for the train so late because it makes me feel really stressed. Using I statements helps us not to accuse or blame each other. And I know when I tell Nicky what I feel when I'm upset, he responds much more positively than if I attacked him with my words.
The third step is listen to each other. When we're having an argument, we're usually very keen our partner understands our point of view, but less keen to understand theirs. Making sure we listen will be especially relevant for us if we know we're better with words than our partner. So a simple but very effective ground rule when we disagree is take it in turns to talk.
The fourth step is brainstorm possible solutions. Now, this may sound unrealistic in the middle of a heated disagreement, but once you've done the first 3 steps, it's much more possible. It's amazing how many ideas we can come up with when we start discussing the issue and listening to our partner rather than attacking each other. So, for example, if the conflict is over money, some possible solutions may be to change who organises the finances. You could make a detailed annual budget together. That really helped us. Or one or both of you decide to use cash rather than the credit card. Another option might be you agree to sit down once a week to review your spending. Or perhaps you decide to ask for help from someone who is good with money. Sometimes it helps to write down a list of possible solutions to see the different possibilities.
The fifth step to reach agreement is decide on the best solution for now and review later. Try it out. If the solution works, the issue will stop causing conflict. If the one we try doesn't seem to work, we can go back to our list and try another one.
My name is Emerson.
My name is Christina.
And right now we live in Mexico City.
We met at a nightclub.
First and last time I danced, but I danced with you that night.
Yes.
I know how to make money. I do not know how to keep money.
I budget.
And she budgets.
Yes.
And
so, yeah.
That was a huge argument.
So 6 months into our marriage, we still hadn't joint accounts. I just said, you know what, I manage all my funds up to that point. And I said, I don't know if I trust you with things because money that's in there, it's really not there because there's bills coming, and that was like a new concept for him. And we ended up going to a financial class. And yeah, he listened to everything he said. I was really proud. I was thinking, first, he's not going to go. Second, if he goes, he's going to sit there and not really pay attention. Third, nothing's going to sink in. And pretty much everything our teacher was telling us, I had said, but he needed to hear it from someone else.
I couldn't hear it from my wife.
And sure enough, he literally did a 180. And from then on, we've been on a budget. And thank God, it's helped us on so many levels.
Yeah.
And he's still, he trusts me.
I'm just not good at it.
No.
So I've let her do it, and it's been great.
Mm-hmm.
These 5 steps for handling conflict have helped Scylla and me hugely when there's been an issue causing tension between us. But they require us to be prepared to make changes to our own behavior and attitudes for the sake of our marriage. It's no good one of us always needing to be right or saying, that's just the way I am, while being critical of our husband or wife. The Bible quotes Jesus saying, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in someone else's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from the other person's eye. At the end of the day, the only person we can change in our marriage is ourselves.
My name is Maki.
And I'm Princey.
We've been married for 8 years plus now, and blessed with 2 lovely daughters. Ours was arranged marriage. It was a bit of discovery on either side. Just in the first 3 years, things didn't go really good between us, and there was a lot of difference of opinions, different backgrounds that we come from. I was always pushing her away while she was trying to come close towards me. And there was so much of grudge, so much of judgment, so much of the male chauvinism, thinking I was better and she wasn't.
Inside my heart, I used to think that what can I do to make him love me? Somehow I want to win his love.
I kept putting her down, letting her, hurting her, and I knew she was crying and I knew she was hurting. Eventually, it just didn't go well with her. She just broke down in the car.
I couldn't bear this. I want to be out of this. So I just told him, this marriage couldn't work. We just can get separated.
When she had said that, I realized that I had really messed it up and really hurt her so much. I had to spend some time completely breaking down my ego, letting it all down. And I said, I need to change. I caught her hand and I said, I'm really sorry. I was so surprised to see that she understood that forgiveness, that I had changed, that the switch had happened. I started respecting and I started falling in love with her.
I was longing for that for the 3 years. It's like, wow, this was the time I'm waiting for. It encouraged me a lot to love her more.
I remember we were so happy after we connected. For the first time, we danced together. We played some music, we danced together, and
with tears.
Yeah, with tears of joy. And I think that I would never forget that day. It just changed for us.
Sometimes couples break up because they think they're incompatible. That's so sad. We're not incompatible unless we refuse to change, unless we refuse to adjust our behavior for the sake of our marriage. I want to read a description written by a surgeon called Richard Seltzer of how one couple accommodated themselves to each other. I stand by the bed where a young woman lies, her face post-operative, her mouth twisted in palsy, clownish. A tiny twig of the facial nerve, the ones to the muscles of her mouth, has been severed. She'll be thus from now on. The surgeon has followed with religious fervour the curve of her flesh, I promise you that. Nevertheless, to remove the tumour in her cheek, I have cut a little nerve. Her young husband is in the room. He stands on the opposite side of the bed, and together they seem to dwell in the evening lamplight, isolated from me, private. Who are they, I ask myself, he and this wry mouth I've made, who gaze at and touch each other so greedily? The young woman speaks. Will my mouth always be like this, she asks. Yes, it will, I say. It's because the nerve was cut. She nods and is silent. But the young man smiles. I like it, he says. It's kind of cute. And all at once I know who he is and I lower my gaze. One is not bold in an encounter with a god. And unmindful, I see he bends to kiss her crooked mouth, and I so close. I can see how he twists his own lips to accommodate hers, to show the kiss still works. And I hold my breath and let the wonder in. We can only change when we know what matters to each other. Sometimes the real issues are buried under years of unresolved conflict, or we've never told each other what frustrates and hurts us. We can't assume our partner automatically knows. We must tell each other about the issues that matter most to us and why they're important to us. There's a big difference between requests and making demands. Requesting change of each other in marriage is a good thing. It's demanding change that is harmful.
We want you to turn to the conversation in your journal called Using the 5 Steps. Talk about what are the good times and what are the bad times for you to try to resolve disagreements, and decide which of the 5 steps is most important for you to remember. Then each choose one issue that has caused or could potentially cause conflict in your relationship. Address one issue at a time and use the 5 steps to look for solutions.
The fourth and final principle for resolving conflict effectively is support your partner. There's a fundamental difference of attitude between expecting our partner will meet all of our needs and focusing on meeting our partner's needs.
Recently, I read the story of a couple whose marriage had spiraled downwards, so much so that they barely acknowledged each other anymore. Years of conflict had all but killed their marriage. One day, the husband broke down in the shower. He realized there was nothing he could do to change his wife. He'd been trying for over 20 years, but he could make some changes himself. The next morning, he asked his wife, "How can I make your day better?" She was very surprised and quite suspicious at the sudden change. So she tested him. She asked him to clean the kitchen, which he did. The next morning, he asked her the same question. "How can I make your day better?" "Clean the garage," she replied. It was a big job and he had a busy day, but he did as she asked. The following day, he asked her again, "How can I make your day better?" This time she told him there was nothing, but he persisted. He asked her every morning for 2 weeks. Finally, his wife broke down and said, "I should be asking you that." She apologized and said, "Can we just spend some time together?" Now, every day, the couple ask each other how they can make each other's day better, and their marriage has been totally transformed.
Focusing not on what our partner can do for us, but on what we can do for them doesn't come naturally or easily to most of us. And for Nikki and me, it's one of the areas where our shared faith has made a big difference in our marriage.
We both became Christians after going out for nearly 2 years, and a lot changed in our relationship as a result. I think in retrospect, one reason was that previously I'd been looking to our relationship and to Scylla to meet all of my deepest needs. As I started looking to God for those needs to be met, it brought about a big change in our relationship. When, as husband and wife, we each look first to God to meet our need for unconditional love, we find a sense of significance, security, and self-esteem. And as Scylla and I experienced those needs being fulfilled in a personal relationship with God, we found we were able to focus more easily on meeting each other's needs.
When I went through experience, I had cancer, and at that time we were young, and we kids like very young as well, and it was shocking to us. When this happened, all our priorities is changed, and our love is changed, and we started to appreciate each and every moment together.
This was quite a crucial time in our lives. I remember that I was thinking I need to be strong for Sammy and strong for myself and for the whole family. And I need to keep him focused on faith and hope and not give him a chance to be scared.
Yeah,
even.
which you did. Well, I wouldn't have went out from it without you.
We've learned how to really trust God with our lives, with our very own lives, and not just by words. I think the major change was realizing that it's not about me. It was basically like living more for you than for myself.
Sally's support during this time was incredible. It was everything.
It was very special to see the vulnerable side as well of each other when things get tough, and we're not holding on our defenses, and when we are completely transparent in front of each other with fears, and so that brought us close to each other and getting closer to God.
One practical way that Nikki and I try to support each other is by spending a few minutes each day praying with and for one another. This short time of praying isn't only about connecting with God, but also connecting with each other. We simply ask each other, "What can I pray for you today?" And the answer will be about very personal things, whatever's uppermost in our minds. Perhaps things we're worried about, or a difficult decision we have to make, or something to do with one of our children. And then we each say a short prayer about what the other has said. But we also recognize that we can't really pray, and almost certainly we won't feel like praying, if there's unresolved conflict between us, because praying together is such an intimate thing to do. So sometimes before we can pray, we have to say sorry if one of us knows that we've upset the other. And often these few minutes of praying together have been the catalyst for us to understand each other better.
We've certainly had to persevere and be intentional about praying together. As with our date nights, it doesn't just happen. We've had to plan this into our lives and make it a habit. Now, we don't always manage it, but when we do, it's one of the most uniting things we do as a couple. It's a time of connection, and it always makes a difference.
Before we end the session, We want to give you the opportunity to ask your partner one of two questions. If you're comfortable praying, ask each other, what can I pray for you? And then pray quite simply, either aloud or silently, something like, Lord, please help my partner with whatever it is. Thank you, Lord. Amen. If you're not comfortable praying, ask your partner that question Nikki mentioned earlier, how can I make your day better? And then respond to them in a way that expresses your support.
Acest program a fost sponsorizat de Maurer Imobiliare.
Știi că cele mai profitabile investiții sunt cele în domeniul imobiliar, dar amâni momentul potrivit pentru a face acest pas din lipsă de timp sau din cauza distanței? Ne-am adaptat vremurilor de acum, astfel încât decizia ta de a investi într-un apartament să nu mai fie amânată. Pentru ca planurile tale să prindă contur, este suficient să parcurgi 7 pași simpli. Când ești pus în fața unor decizii importante, apelează la profesioniști și alege un partener de încredere cu care să pleci la drum. Chiar dacă suntem departe fizic, azi tehnologia ne ajută să ne putem conecta. Cu un simplu click vei avea la îndemână toate informațiile de care ai nevoie pentru a putea lua o decizie. Suntem online pentru tine și ne putem conecta de la distanță. Așteptăm mesajul tău la care vei primi în cel mai scurt timp un răspuns din partea echipei de vânzări. Vizitele pe șantier le-am înlocuit cu vizita online a apartamentelor noastre. Te aducem aproape de noi pentru a ne cunoaște mai bine prin intermediul turului virtual. Accesează-l pentru a pătrunde în orașul din interiorul orașului. Deși departe, totuși atât de aproape. Punem la punct ultimele detalii cu privire la investiția ta printr-o întâlnire pe Zoom sau WhatsApp. Concretizăm de la distanță planurile tale. Toate actele sunt completate și îți sunt transmise pe e-mail. În timp ce tu te preocupi în continuare de activitățile tale cotidiene, noi construim pentru tine. Timpul trece neobservat, iar azi avem ocazia să ne salutăm printr-o strângere de mână. De acum, fii pregătit să te bucuri de rentabilitatea investiției tale. Ai văzut cât de simplu este? Investește azi într-un apartament din Avant Garden 3. Constanța, orașul meu, orașul în care mi-am imaginat dintotdeauna că mă voi bucura de o viață frumoasă și împlinită, ceea ce a făcut ca pașii spre viitorul la care visam să mă poarte către locul unde voi găsi cel mai important lucru, încrederea că sunt acasă. Am văzut cum se construiesc visurile pe șantierul Maurer Residence Constanța, cum oameni dedicați pun suflet în fiecare zi pentru a da viață celor mai frumoase povești. Și cum munca, responsabilitatea și profesionalismul transformă visurile a mii de oameni în realitate. Atunci am conștientizat cât de importantă este alegerea pe care urma să o fac și că singurul loc pe care aș putea să-l numesc acasă este cel ales cu sufletul. Grija, implicarea și dăruirea echipei m-au convins să mă alătur acestei povești frumoase, iar astăzi mă bucur de cea mai mare răsplată. Sunt acolo unde întotdeauna mi-am dorit să fiu. Sunt aici, alături de sufletul în pereche. În comunitatea în care am ales să fac parte sunt aproape de tot ceea ce iubesc și de oameni care împărtășesc aceleași valori. Grija pentru celălalt și pentru tot ce ne face viața frumoasă în fiecare zi. Mulțumirea care dă naștere celor mai prețioase momente. Încrederea în viitorul construit alături de cei mai dragi oameni. siguranța mea și a familiei mele în fiecare clipă, convingerea că fiecare zi este una frumoasă, plină de clipe minunate, atunci când ai ceea ce-ți dorești, atunci când ești acasă.
Nimic din ce s-a realizat până astăzi nu a apărut peste noapte. Așa cum nici acest câmp nu s-a transformat într-un oraș în câteva clipe. Totul a avut nevoie de timp. Au fost 15 ani de muncă, de răbdare, perseverență, de responsabilități asumate și credință. Suntem profund recunoscători tuturor celor care au ales brandul Maurer Imobiliare și celor care au crezut în noi încă de la început. Voi ne-ați dat încrederea să continuăm, astfel că până în prezent am construit visurile românilor prin 8 proiecte imobiliare în 6 orașe din România. Ne aplecăm în fața tuturor oamenilor care au ales să facă parte din familia noastră. Suntem peste 10.000. 10.000 de voci care ne-au spus mulțumesc. Mii de oameni pentru care Maurer Imobiliare înseamnă acasă. Mii reprezintă o etapă importantă din evoluția noastră, dar nu ne oprim aici. Suntem pregătiți să trecem la următorul nivel. Împreună scriem povestea Maurer Imobiliare mai departe.
Locuință, investiție sau casă de vacanță. Bucură-te și tu de facilitățile unui complex rezidențial modern în orașul cetate. Maurer Residence Sighișoara. Acum este mai ușor să-ți îndeplinești visul. Un proiect dezvoltat de Maurer Imobiliare.
Pentru o viață sănătoasă, consumați zilnic minimum 2 litri de apă. A avut în evidență până acum peste 10.000 de pacienți cu patologie psihiatrică complexă. A avut rezultate notabile în legătură cu dependența de alcool și terapia transcraniană în tulburările depresive. Cum este viața unui medic psihiatru care își iubește munca? În această seară, de la ora 22, în direct la Știrea Cea Bună cu Cornel Dervășan, va veni dr. Maria Roman, medic psihiatru, alături de care vom explora câteva lucruri despre care nu se vorbește de obicei. Vă așteptăm cu noi! În această ediție a rubricii Afaceri Creative, Andra Raluca Tăutu, cofondatoarea Archia Creative Home, ne spune cum se stabilesc tarifele în proiectele de design interior. Se poate crea un business profitabil din profesia de arhitect? Mai târziu vorbim despre cum obțin firmele autorizația și viza de mediu, dar și despre amenziile pe care le pot primi dacă nu raportează gestiunea deșeurilor. Pe ce se bazează o economie verde? Ne spune Daniela Dobre, director executiv al unei companii de consultanță în domeniul mediului. Florin Stoian vă așteaptă cu o nouă ediție a emisiunii Business la Superlativ.